Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of EduAdvice podcast. Today, we have with us someone whose career journey beautifully demonstrates that success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder, it's about creating a meaningful impact. Joining us today is Mr. Sairam Natarajan, co founder of Mindei, an organization working at the intersection of AI and preventive mental health. Before starting Mindei, he spent over decades in a leadership role across renowned organizations including Deloitte UK, KPMG India, and so on, specializing in governance, risk management, compliance, and ethics. So, thank you so much for joining in, Mr. Sairam, and welcome to EduAdvice podcast.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you for having me. I've never felt as good about my career as right now. You've kind of glorified it a bit more than it actually is. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So, you began your career in governance, compliance, and risk management with organizations like EY, KPMG, and Deloitte. So, what inspired you to transition from successful corporate career to becoming a founder in the mental health space?
So there are two questions in that question. One is why did I decide to become an entrepreneur? And the second is why mental health? So there are two questions there, right? I think the whole entrepreneurial piece is something that I've been passionate about and driven about for quite some time. While I was in college or even while I was doing my time in the corporate, jobs. That has always driven me. The idea of building something of your own, the idea of something that could potentially outlast you and outgrow you is quite powerful. I mean, it's one of the reasons why people have children because they will outgrow you and outlast you. So the idea to have a startup um, was along the same lines. It kind of has to align with where you are in your personal life in terms of financial security, family stability, and so on and so forth, which is why it happened when it happened. But the drive to do something of my own had always been there. Why mental health is a very interesting question. I think one thing that you probably missed out in your introduction, and rightly so, because it's not a lot in the public domain, is that before starting Mindy Labs, so my co-founder and I, we were building a parenting platform, and with the idea of supporting young parents transition from different transitioning into different phases of their lives. Uh, and at that point in time, it was moderately successful as a startup, and we were trying to raise funds, and we were not able to. And at that point in time, we wanted to pivot away into something that might be a bit more significant, bit more substantial. And when we spoke to about 4,000 parents who had used that parenting platform that we had built, um, the feedback that we got was very comprehensive. People talked about bullying, they talked about digital addiction, they talked about pornography, substance abuse, they talked about academic stress and pressures, they talked about teenage love and breakups and the impact that it can have on young people. And when my co-founder and I, we sat down and we tried to kind of package it all together, it nicely and neatly fell in the bracket of mental health and well-being. So that, and the combination of the fact that I have myself had a couple of uh, experience of mental health issues, whether it be depression, whether it be a heightened stress levels, etc. I think that just said, yeah, let's build something in this space, and let's build something that is going to focus on the preventive side of things more than the corrective and the curative side of things.
Yeah, yeah. Like even government brought in initiatives focusing on mental health, and there is very less innovation going in mental health because the child development depends holistically on mental health as well. Like this space has been ignored by many of us. So you made like us to focus on this, and this is very important as well. As you mentioned, children have been bullied or whatever elsewhere problems going on in their house has been reflected on their mental health, and tackling it
Sure,
is very important. And
absolutely.
yeah, at EduAdvice, many of our listeners are students and young professionals. So today, anxiety, burnout, and career uncertainties are increasingly common. From your experience, what are the biggest mental health challenges which have been faced by young people today, and what practical steps they should take to overcome these?
Okay. So you have already listed some of the burning issues that are around, whether it be academic pressures, whether it be digital addiction, um, the fear of not finding meaningful employment, the fear of not getting through the choice of college that you want to get into. All those are very, very sort of pertinent and relevant in the current time and age. Um, what is also interesting is that when I compare the young people of today to when I was young, almost two and a half decades ago, um, I appreciate that there's a lot of awareness around mental health issues. So people understand terms like stress and depression and anxiety, and they understand terms like loneliness and so on and so forth, right? But awareness doesn't automatically mean literacy, right? It is one thing to know two and two makes four, and another to be able to apply it when you're transacting at a shop, right?
Yeah.
So I think mental health literacy still lacks quite a bit. And what I mean by that is one thing, it's one thing to say I'm feeling stressed today. It's another to say that when I am stressed, indulging in sort of breathing exercises or meditation or speaking to a friend of mine helps me. And that is where literacy comes into play. Like, what do you do with the difference between information and data? Information is just information, data gives you insight. So that is kind of what has to be the most important thing at this time and age. um, Fortunately or unfortunately, a grand majority of mental health issues can be addressed through self-care, through conversations with trusted people like friends, family, or through conversations with a therapist if that makes you comfortable. Not everything has to go to a level of clinical diagnosis and medication and all of there is a certain subset of mental health conditions and issues that require that, but a grand majority of it just requires you to be able to speak with somebody who can listen to you in a non-objective manner, offer you perspectives, and offer you techniques that can help you regulate your mental state a little bit better. So it's not expensive, it's not complex, but it needs a certain level of understanding of what do I do with my mental state. So if I feel like I don't want to spend a lot of time with people, right? If and that is something that I see a lot of young people going through right now. They prefer being all by themselves with their devices, and they are more comfortable talking to strangers online than to real people in person. It is okay to be able to say that I think I'm suffering from loneliness and that's why I'm doing this. It is another to say that I know what are the steps that are needed for me to come out of this rut. I will put myself in uncomfortable situations and meet with, even if meeting strangers is the thing, but meet people in real life settings. Whether it's turning up to a sport event or going to a concert, or just going down to the park in the apartment and meeting some new neighbor friends who you have not spoken to before. So it's those kinds of things that need a bit more attention as to how do you empower young people with tools and techniques that can help them manage and regulate their mental state in a slightly better way. That for me has to be the focus area. I know we build AI and it's all technology and it's all, but the nuts and bolts of it is very, very basic. It's very, very human, and it has to deal with how do I help myself? How can I ask for help from others? And how do I normalize that entire thing?
Yeah, so rather than being isolated and involving more in community engagement would be very helpful to the youth. because they stay in
I mean,
isolated.
community engagement. Yeah, again, community engagement is a very heavy term, right? One would say community engagement means volunteering and involving myself with an NGO and all of that. It doesn't have to be any of that. It could just be that they are celebrating. I don't know. Let's say 15th August is about to come in a month or so. And if you live in an apartment complex and they're doing a small flag hoisting and small cultural event, it might just mean that I'll go sit there and see what's happening. That is not the traditional understanding of community engagement, but it is putting yourself out there in front of other people and giving yourself the opportunity to ask for help from others, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Got it. So, you have spent years working in governance, ethics, and compliances. As AI continues to evolve rapidly, what ethical principles do you believe every organization should adopt when developing AI solutions, particularly in sensitive fields like healthcare and mental wellness?
Yeah, I mean, these principles are well established. So, governance principles for AI are well established, globally known principles. The first and foremost is confidentiality. So what you share with the AI cannot and should not be shared with third parties, cannot and should not be shared with individuals who you don't consent to your information being shared, etc. And the whole consenting piece has to be also very it has to be an active consent, not a passive consent. It has to be explicit, not implicit. You have to avoid dark patterns. So for instance, there are a bunch of AI tools, I'll not name them, where they are doing the legally right thing by obtaining consent, but the real stuff that they're doing with your data is buried somewhere in the terms and conditions in the 50th term. And 99.99% of the people will not read those terms and conditions, and they'll never know what's happening with their data. So confidentiality and dealing with that in the ethical way is fundamentally the most important thing. The other is explainability, which is, if I give an input into AI, into any AI model, whether it's mental health or otherwise, and it gives me a result, I need to know how it arrived at that result. And only that will make the AI more trustable. So, so the AI model has to be explainable. In addition to giving the outcomes, it needs to show, what aspects of the input it has considered, what has it done in the background, and then give it to me in an explainable way so that I can understand and say, yeah, that makes sense, or say that doesn't make sense. The third has to be the human in the loop exercise. That is probably one that most people are missing out on, which is any AI at this point in time. You could take the best AI models out there, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or any of those Mid-Journey. You take any of those models. Um, a human in the loop is absolutely necessary to be able to, especially in a healthcare setting, to be able to interpret something and give an opinion or an advice on whether something is a problem, and if it is, how serious of a problem it is. Um, to give you an example, there is a company that is building an AI model that can look at X-rays and give you an indication of your health state. Right now, the AI model is looking at the X-ray and saying you are unhealthy and these are the potential conditions. But only a doctor will have the experience and the knowledge to look at that output and say, you know what, completely discard what the AI is saying, because actually film is dirty. The film is dirty, right? So the film might have some grains and spots, and the AI model is picking that up as an ailment or an illness, and then it's giving you a certain course of action based on that. So the human in the loop is, especially in healthcare setting, is a non-negotiable.
Yeah, so complete automation in healthcare won't help, as you mentioned. And yeah,
I
human.
mean, automation, yeah. So automation is, automation used to happen 10 years ago. We are talking AI. AI is not doing automation. AI is looking at something and saying, this is what could be possibly wrong. This is what you should be doing. It can set you down a path of action, which may not be the right path of action for you,
Yeah,
which
and
is where the human in the loop becomes important.
yeah. AI will basically provide us with the reports, but the actual insights which has to be driven by humans only. Like as you mentioned, human is a very important aspect in healthcare. The way you mentioned
Yeah,
it was because of
yeah.
film, but
I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying both have a role to play. So AI. So let me put it this way, now. Human without the AI will take a lot of time and involve a lot of cost to get to the right answers, right? So
yeah,
which is why AI becomes really important, because it gets you from A to B in a very quick manner. But whether B is the right place to be or not is a decision to be made by the human. So in terms of time saving, cost saving, effort saving, AI is paramount. And more it is becoming a non-negotiable element of the decision-making process, including in healthcare. But AI on its own is not yet clever enough to be 100% accurate. And I don't think it will ever be. So I don't think it will ever be 100% accurate. Just like a human can never be 100% accurate. But a human by default is skeptical. So a human by default might say, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है, like I feel this is possible, and therefore I'm recommending X, Y, and Z. And then when a doctor tells you something like that, you also sense the hesitation and the skepticism, and then you go back and think about, right, maybe I need a second opinion or a third opinion, right? But an AI more and more is giving you confident answers. It is giving you absolute answers. It is not saying, it could be this, but I don't know. AI at this point in time is very rarely saying I don't know, which is why the human in the loop is important.
yeah, got it. So you mentioned about the data, like data about the AI collecting the data, and we should know about it. Where it is getting from. But it would be controversy to bring this point. As we know, data is new oil. And from the day we start, like from the starting of the day to the end of the day, we are with our mobile phones. Whatever we are speaking, based on that, we already get recommendations on our phones. Like if we want to buy a shoes, or if I talk to my friend that I want to buy a shoes, automatically that comes in my recommendations and feed. So, what's your opinion on all of these? So already we
Uh,
are in dangerous situation, I feel, because data is already being collected whenever we are speaking to anyone, whatever, and that's where this data is all going on and bringing us the feeds what we want to.
okay. So yes, to some extent that risk exists. More and more technology is getting cleverer and interconnected. So for instance, a conversation on WhatsApp might be the reason why you are seeing some ads on Instagram, right? That level of data sharing is happening. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said consent is really important and explicit consent is really important. So when you signed up to WhatsApp, did you read the terms and conditions? I'm asking you a question.
Okay.
Did
Yeah,
you read the terms and conditions when you signed up to WhatsApp?
like mostly not because it's in huge detail. Like that's a mistake.
Exactly. Exactly. So when and they would have clearly stated that data that you're sharing with us, um, to what extent and at what detail is being shared with others and so on. They would have gone into great level of detail. So with data, especially in India, people, I this is my personal opinion. I think people are not thinking of data as currency, whereas companies are thinking of data as currency, right? So and that is the delta, or that is the arbitrage which is causing all this problem. The moment individuals start think like the moment I start thinking that my pan, my Aadhaar, my date of birth, all of that is currency, there might be somebody who might be willing to pay for getting all this data, right? Is when the culture around data and data privacy will change. um Having said that, a lot of the mature tech companies and AI models and all of that, what they will also do is make the distinction between data and personally identifiable data. And that is a nuance that everybody should understand. Um, for instance, I live in Bangalore, right? That is data. But I live in such and such apartment, flat number, such and such, blah, 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 is personally identifiable data. So if the data can be used to trace me, then that becomes personally identifiable data, and that is even more sensitive than other broad-based generic data. And whether organizations are enterprises are making the distinction between how they're collecting PII, personally identifiable data, versus other data, how they're using it, how they're sharing it, etc. That will make the distinction between an ethical company and a let's say borderline gray area unethical company. We don't use personally identifiable data, for instance, in our AI models. We strip out data that can be used to retrace who that data belong to. And what we are left with is more general data, which is what we use to both train our models and build our model on.
Yeah, like what I feel is data is a new era of colonization which has been done by Western world and us. Like what's
No, I mean,
yeah,
data is always exist. No. I mean, there is nothing Western about it. There is no colonization angle to it. Data is data. Data has existed always. I mean, what people are doing with data has changed, but the data has always existed. Data is like oxygen. It's always been there.
yeah, it's there, but the way it has been used now, like if suppose we are not paying for WhatsApp, but you might be the product for WhatsApp, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's my opinion.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are absolutely you are, and that's which is why I said data is currency. One of my tech friends used to say this. So if you are not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yeah.
Is what or your so it's either your data. There is another next level, and I know we're digressing slightly, but just for you might want to read up on this a little bit. The next currency is attention span. So companies are investing heavily on how to both capture and resell attention and attention span, which is why all these short form content companies are more successful than other companies, which is why YouTube had to move away from the long form content to the YouTube shorts
Yeah, yeah.
uh, way of working, because they saw that Reels is doing more well than their YouTube long form video modality, and therefore Google said, let's also do that. Now, why not do that if that's what's so that if that's what's keeping people on our platform? So yeah, I mean that's always going to be there. People will find what sells and find a way to sell it. You just if the data belongs to you, you just need to be sensible and careful about how you use your data, how you share your data, how you use your data, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Got it. So, starting a company that combines technology with mental health care must have been come with unique challenges. So, could you share some of the biggest obstacle you have faced while building the Mindei, and how these experiences have shaped you as a founder?
I mean, every day of life of a founder, irrespective of what they are building, is a challenge, and challenges come in different shapes and forms. But mental health is still not a topic that India as a society is taking seriously. Um, that itself poses a big challenge, because when you're trying to like, it is easier for me to sell um, a 10-minute quick delivery app to somebody as an idea to a mental health care app. That itself tells a story, right? that people are not ready to indulge and invest in self-care and taking care of themselves and so on and so forth. So building in mental health space is really difficult in India, especially, and that's the biggest challenge. The second challenge is, even within mental health, we have chosen to invest in preventive approaches more than corrective and curative approaches. So a lot of companies that are offering therapy and counseling as a service are doing okay. They're doing well for themselves. But we wanted to kind of get to a point where can we put something in the hands of people that can empower them to get to a point where they don't have to access therapy or counseling. And that, in again, preventive health as a concept is even newer and even more difficult in India. India is a as a mindset of why fix something that is not broken? Jugaad pe chal raha hai to chalane do. That kind of mindset, right? It's if it's if it's working, it's working. I mean, like, okay, it's not efficient, but let it carry on. That is the mindset. So prevent. Even if you look at all the diagnostic labs, more than 80%, 85% of their revenue comes from referrals from hospitals and clinics where a patient has already walked in with some sort of ailment. Only 10 to 15% of their revenues, and these are giants, comes from people who are preventively doing their blood check, or preventively doing their urine work, or preventively doing their stool work, right? So when those giants are struggling to make a dent in the preventive health market, then who are we? So that's the other big challenge. What it teaches you is resilience. That's all. So you kind of face a challenge, you find a way to work around it, or you find a way to live with that challenge, and then you keep moving forward. It's like one step at a time, one step at a time. It's the way I've thought about entrepreneurship is that ultimately it's a question of how long are you able to survive, whether it is through your own money or your client's money or your investors' money or a combination of those things. It's a game of how long you can survive, and in the process, can you move the needle in an area that you are passionate about? That's essentially the game, and that's what it's taught me, to be very kind of focused on moving forward, even if it's a small step forward. How do we move forward? What do we need to do that? 100 people are saying no to us. Is there one person who will say yes to us? Great, fantastic. Focus on that. Find other people like them and keep moving on. So it teaches you resilience and it teaches you acceptance. It's very philosophical that way.
Yeah. So, many students believe they need to follow a straight career path. Your
Yeah.
journey shows that careers can evolve in an unexpected directions. What advice would you give to students and early career professionals who are still searching for their purpose or considering a career field?
There are a lot of questions in that question. Um, Personally, I don't think that any career path is a straight career path. To give you an example, one of my aunts started working in State Bank of India when she started working, and she retired from State Bank of India, right? One could argue that that's a straight career path, but she has been a cashier, she has been a treasury person, she has been she's managed operations and logistics, she's been a branch manager, she's been into debt and loans and all of that. She's done like more than 25, 30 different kinds of roles in the entirety of her career. Nobody ever does the same thing over and over again. So no career is linear, and therefore one must not chase linearity or the lack of it, right?
Yeah.
Just because non-linear careers make interesting stories doesn't necessarily mean I go and chase them, because it will happen to you no matter what. Everybody has a non-linear career when you give it a long enough time. I've been working for 18 years. You pick anybody who's done any kind of job or work or profession for 18 years, they would have had a non-linear career. Like you take doctors, for instance. They would have started off as a junior doctor. They would go on to become a senior doctor. They might then become head of department. They might set up their own clinic. Things happen, right? In between, they would have gone on to do their doctorate. They might have done their PhD or another kind of specialization, super specialization. Don't focus on linearity or lack of it. Try and stay in the moment as much as possible with an eye to the future. So, in the best career advice that I got when I was younger is building a career is like driving on the road. So you can't drive looking backwards. You can't drive looking too far ahead as well. You have to look at what's in the next 100 meters. are there any obstacles? Are there any kind of other vehicles, etc.? But every now and then you have to look in the rearview mirror and you have to look is there a signal in front of me? Is there a roadblock ahead of me? Every now and then you look farther down and you look backward, but bulk of it is staying in the moment. You look at what's around you, right? So staying in the moment as much as possible is the most, do the best that you can in the moment. So if somebody couldn't get into IIMs and that's all they desperately wanted to do, get into the next best college that you can. It's all right. Or if you're driven, take another attempt. Irrespective, you're deciding what's going to happen in the next 6 months, next 1 year, next 2 years. That's all. All this idea of what's my lifelong vision and ambition, it will play out on its own. You will unravel what your life's purpose and mission is in the course of living the life. And therefore living in the moment is probably the most important thing. Your question also had something around purpose and all of those things. I think it is important to be purposeful, but it's also a little bit overrated. You will uncover your purpose as life plays out, and let it play out. There will be a moment of epiphany where something will happen, someone will say something, and there will be a penny drop moment, and you'll be like, acha, this is what I want to focus on, and this is what I will do, and you double down and you invest in that. But consciously sitting and trying to figure out what is my life's mission and purpose, and struggling with the fact that you've not arrived at something, that is just, in my opinion, lazy.
Yes, sir. Beautifully
Doing something, even if it feels random, is better than doing nothing while in your head you're searching for a higher purpose.
Yeah, even for that higher purpose, they need to at least start.
Doing is any day more valuable than thinking.
Yes, absolutely.
Doing is, you have to do it, because ideas are plenty, ideas are cheap. I mean, like, if you give me 2 minutes now with all this AI models and all, I can generate 200 ideas in 2 minutes. Ideas are plenty. Do you have the conviction to pick an idea, even if it's a small idea, and start working towards it? There is a book that for all young people I will recommend. There's a book. It's a thin book. It's called The One Thing. Read that book. It talks about, at any given point in time, you have to focus on only one thing, and just keep working at it. The moment you've done that, focus on the next one thing, and that just gives you a lot of clarity in life.
Yes, sir.
And clarity and simplicity in life. Nahi to that so many complexities, so many moving parts, so many ambiguities, that itself can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and your valuable insights. So, today's conversation reminds us that technology is at its best when it serves humanity. From governance and ethics to founding Mindei and advancing preventive health care, your work demonstrates how purpose, innovation, and compassion can come together to create lasting impact. Thank you so much for joining in and sharing your valuable insights.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you so much for having me. Lovely speaking with you. I wish you all the very best. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you so much.